Political talk on another PolitiPod Live. Tonight we'll cover Freedom 250, This Week in Death, Issue Update, Fascism Creep, International News, and Trump Dump. I'm Tom Bickle.
I'm Hannah Soldner.
And I'm Matt Nisanoff. We'll start with Freedom 250. I'm going to bring up three topics and then we'll talk about them and then bring up three more. But to start off, we've got what is Freedom 250 and how has it been a typical Trump failure? We'll also want to talk about the first day and see how that went. And also his speech. Of course, he had to give a speech. So we'll talk a little bit about that. For starters, it is Trump's way of undermining America 250, which is the official celebration of our country's 250 years of independence. And of course, he couldn't let that go. He couldn't allow us to have one party without him somehow inserting himself. And he's done that by setting up a parallel event called Freedom 250. And it's gone just about as well as you might expect any Trump-branded product. The first day was canceled, and people were chased away from the mall. And then his big speech that he was supposed to give kept getting postponed because of weather. There was some rain. So his actual speech wasn't given until 11:30, well after a lot of folks had gone home, gone to bed. I think even some other time zones, they probably already had gone to bed by that time. But that was the crowning achievement of his for the first day. So what do you guys think?
I mean, it's just as you said. He took over what should have been America 250, made it Freedom 250, absorbed all the money, and who knows what four winds he scattered that to. Made a sham and a mockery of just every single event and area and business related to it. Crashing failure.
Yeah, it was a classic. It was very classic Trump. A lot of people didn't show up. I'm sure he said that they did. The whole the speech thing. It's probably good for him that it got postponed. It was a very hot day, I think, and it was not a time to be standing out in the sun for an hour talking when you're in your 80s. And it was absurd.
That was the whole point of looking forward to it.
That's true. They also set off enough fireworks that it made DC's air the lowest quality in the country, in the world, for a day or so.
Speaking of the fireworks, have you seen video of that? There's so much smoke from the fireworks, you can't see the fireworks. It's just lights flashing inside clouds, and there's no clarity. It looked like hell. It was garbage. It looked like if you had infrared farts in a in a brown paper bag or something. I don't know. Not a lot of glory to be going around. Why do we let? How do we manage to let somebody? This is our big, quarter millennia, and we hand it to this idiot, and he just extorts it for all the money. He just hits it like a pinata until the coins stop falling out, and yeah, we'll never get that back. So he leaves a little shit stain, he leaves a big shit stain everywhere he goes, and I'm over it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I feel like from 1,000 yards away, like it's objectively quite cool, to be going around for 250 years with democracy and whatever. Yeah, it's something I would like to have been excited about, but not anymore.
There was a time when you could be corny in this country and enjoy goofy, nerdy stuff like how old your country was, and eat a corn dog while a lady dressed as Statue of Liberty that's 4.5 feet tall walks around the place. No, we didn't get that. We didn't get any of that. It all sucked.
Well, it was also pointed out, people have fairs all of the time in America. There are state fairs, there are county fairs.
True.
There's constantly fairs going on, you can get a deep fried Snickers somewhere in America.
Right.
Almost
Just
that.
like abortion, you can
There's-
get different services in different states. You can't have a unifying federal, event. Nope, you got to go to your own states. It's states' rights now until it's not.
Well,
But the point is, there are people who run these things, and they run them all the time, and it's not while it might take the work to make it happen. The fact is, there are people who do that work and that do
Sure.
make it happen, and this is not some sort of reflecting pool sort of thing where once you completely screw it up, it's screwed up, and you have to blame it on mythical terrorists.
I will say though, since Tom was saying that you couldn't even see the fireworks because there was too many fireworks, it feels like a very classic Trump of like, sometimes there's a reason why things are not done bigger and better. Not because we couldn't do them, but at a certain point they actually become worse when you do too big,
Yeah.
So
Yep, good point. And with the weather concerns, at one point they canceled things and asked everyone to leave. The way they asked people to leave was they had National Guardsmen go out and start flipping people's picnic tables upside down. That was their sign to go. And so even the management of it, instead of, would it have been difficult for them to simply go to people and say, "Hi, we're evacuating now. We got to do that because of concerns of lightning strikes or whatever the issue was." They could have just said it and explained it and had people move on, but they have to do the pro forma tough guy, Department of War instead of Department of Defense, and coming out and flip the tables and make a big show of it. And then there was the hand glider guy.
You're lucky they didn't have dogs and hoses.
Right. Listen, literally.
Happy birthday, America, and I'll get the F out.
We'll get to that. So what about the hand glider guy?
Hang glider guy, glad you asked. Yeah, hang glider guy. Wait, we got one more shot here. He's bringing it in. Right on in. Perfect. Oh, hell.
Summarizes the administration.
That's
perfectly.
right. Quite the parallel,
Yeah. Freedom to fit.
yeah.
Yeah, and then there was the other video that we don't have, but that's out there as well, where they had people on a stage and they had some young people doing a dance routine, and apparently things were not set up properly. I don't know if they were, who they had as stage hands putting things together, but something was not put together correctly, and that meant a row of lights came loose and almost hit the kids. And unfortunately, it did not hit anybody, but is that sort of dangerous. The negligence is really what you have to call it, where things were not set up properly and some people could have been hurt.
Yeah, it was a huge panel. I don't know if it was lights. I didn't know it was lights, but it just was like twice the size of a sofa, if not bigger, and just came crashing down on the left side of the stage. And like you said, luckily it didn't hit anybody, but it very well could have just as well. And it's all fun and games until somebody loses a spine. So I wouldn't be a part of anything those people have anything to do with.
And of course, to put a fine point on it, if it's Donald Trump, you have to have people from both sides, right? So Proud Boys were out and marching around Washington, D.C., white supremacist khakis and shirts, and they all had masks on for some reason. I thought with COVID, the whole thing was that they couldn't wear the mask because it was so restrictive and so difficult to do. And
yes, it's an encroachment on the freedom. I think we said Proud Boys. I think it's Patriot Front was the group. Someone please correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I think it's Patriot Front, not Proud Boys. Not that I could tell the difference if you gave me a can of gasoline and a lighter. I don't know.
Well, I apologize apologize. I'll tell you.
That may not have been your fault. May have been mine. I don't know. I'm not here to assign blame. I'm just trying to keep it up to date.
If indeed I was inaccurate, I absolutely apologize, and Proud Boys can wait for me to write them an apology note.
Don't worry. They'll stand back and stand by for that.
Perfect. Well, so any last comment on the Freedom 250 before we move on? Okay. Well, that brings us to our second issue tonight, which is This Week in Death. And- thank you. Perfect.
Oh, you
Now-
woke my dog up.
Oh, holy smokes.
Matt, look
We've
what you
got
made me do.
someone who will not be waking up is the former leader of Iran, and that's pronounced
Khomeini.
Khamenei.
Holly Khamenei. Yeah.
Khomeini.
Khamenei.
Like
And
Kamala. Don't do that.
Khamenei's funeral. So the leader Khamenei was killed in the initial couple of days of the Iran kerfuffle, and it was initially a whole debate over whether he was actually killed or
A
not.
kerfuffle?
I think it's a kerfuffle.
It was almost a to-do.
I heard it wasn't his excursion.
There we go. Veritably a military operation. So whatever you call it, and the leader of Iran was killed in one of the initial strikes. The Iranians said, "No, he's fine. He's going to give a speech. Don't worry about it." And the Israelis said, "Oh no, we got him. We got him. We know we got him." And so for several days, it was not clear what had exactly happened, but he was taken out in one of these strikes. The funeral has been delayed, which I don't think is the custom for the cultural custom. But the Iranians said that they had to delay it for months because they feared if there was a large crowd in the middle of the capital, then that would become a target for a strike. So they held off on doing it until now. And so, I mean, I'm certain there's a legitimate concern for them to have done that. Sure. It's not like he's going to be any less dead. So it's going to be, it is a funeral procession, and it did take place. And now we have also, as dead as he is, so is the ceasefire. There have been there was an action where the Iranians went after some boats they've said didn't comply with the instructions to get through the Straits of Hormuz. And in return, the U.S. has started bombing again. There's been several days worth of bombing. And Trump has even said that the war is on again. The ceasefire is off because they're liars and they're this and they're that. They're scum and they're,
right.
there's so he's trying to just find, and it may be just another way of him being able to bring peace again. He would like to bring this war to a peace for the 40th time that he's claimed to do so. And I think out of that, there is a thing where he claimed that he stopped 100 wars, and about 42 of them have been this one. So it could well be 100. I'd have to double check on that. That's alleged.
I'm not a math guy. I'm not a numbers guy.
I don't have a whiteboard for keeping track on that. Nolan Wells has been missing since July 4th, and apparently the body of Nolan Wells was found on a Gulf island during the search for the missing teen. And so we anything on that? Anyone want to chip in on?
I mean, Nolan Wells was, as I understand it, young fella of color, and went to party with a bunch of white fellas on a boat and didn't come back. And I'm not sure of the specifics, but I don't think anybody called the police to find out. Nobody even waited for their buddy Nolan They just left the island without him, and when everybody said, "Where's Nolan?" everybody shrugged. I don't know. So it sounds pretty bad, and the racial element doesn't help. Bad enough somebody's dead. I don't
Now,
know.
he was not a he was not a small child. He
No,
was
he's a big old football
apparently a
player.
football player, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and so not. Um, we'll have to see what they say now that they've recovered the body as far as cause of death. But it will certainly be interesting to find out what exactly happened. And these were supposed to be his friends, I think, right? Were they other players of the team? And
You know that I don't know.
okay, well, we'll have to wait for more information on that. But uh, thank you, Tom, for making certain we brought that up so that we can keep track of it and do an update in future on the death of Nolan Wells.
Yeah, the reporting I'm seeing does say it was a group of friends. Well, his friends, they're friends with themselves. I don't know, but yeah, it seems here they were his friends.
Okay. Moving on, another person who is involved with some sort of mysterious act. Charlie Kirk was involved with a shooting a few weeks ago, and there's a trial that started uh, focused on a person who fired a gun in that area where that incident happened. And I understand that there's evidence as to, police are saying they went and saw where the shooter was set up, and they were saying that it was a little den or a little, they had a nickname for it, a shooter pen or something like that, meaning he had all sorts of things set up allegedly, and the weapon itself and how they could trace it and find out where it came from the bullets, from the markings on the bullets. And so that trial has begun, and we'll have to keep track and see what they say. Anything on Charlie Kirk?
Nothing to add.
And I just wanted to mention there's a number of things that have happened across the country as far as violence and gun play and gun violence. In Coney Island in New York, there was a family out of front of their home, just about a block or two from the beach where people had gathered on July 4th for the fireworks, and thousands of people were at the beach. This is an annual event, and the display was about an hour long. It was very pleasant. It was very fun, and yet after that, apparently somebody went to this family and shot 8 members of the family, including children. So police have not caught the perpetrator, and we'll have to find out what the story is. But there is a survivor. The brother of the family, one of the brothers in the family, survived the shooting, and so there will be more on that story. Another story of some twists in New York City. New York City police officer was shot in a friendly fire incident. He had his bulletproof vest on and he was fine. Apparently, a person went beside so there were 4 undercover police officers in an unmarked SUV. Somebody walked past it and walked in front of it, and then uh, there were some there were some gunshots. There was apparently it's we don't know the sequence of events, but there was a bullet in the car in the SUV, and in turn, 4 police officers started shooting at the person. Allegedly, they started firing back, and they hit one of their fellow police officers in the back. So the only person injured was one of the other police officers hit in the back by friendly fire. And fortunately, he had his protective vest on, and it did stop the bullet. It left a wound. It left a mark, of course, but he is alive. Another incident of similar nature: National Guardsman shot and killed a man in Memphis. He is not fine. He is dead. And it's not clear exactly what allowed a National Guardsman who was supposed to be helping only police the care of ICE agents to make certain that they are safe. Apparently, there's no ICE involved with this situation, but this guardsman followed this particular individual and shot him. And also down in Pensacola, of course, remembering the dangling bit of America down by the bottom there, Florida. In Pensacola, there were 6 people shot and 1 dead. All of that as part of July 4th. Anything on gun violence before we move on?
I'm generally against it.
I just wanted to learn more about this Memphis thing and learn that there was another shooting today there. So there's been 2 shootings in just a few days.
Does it say if it's did it say who was involved with? Is another National Guardsman or was
It says federal task force member. Second person in 4 days is fatally shot in Memphis by federal task force member. This is from the AP.
Wow. Okay. And does it give any sort of cause or any sort of?
That occurred while DEA agents were serving a drug warrant at a hotel room.
Okay. Well, there you
And
go.
then, but apparently there's some conflicting reports, so they just say for reasons still under investigation.
We'll have to keep track of that for the next couple of weeks and see if something pops up.
Yeah.
Sometimes they are a little more able to fill in the details when they think it's out of the news cycle. We're going to move on to our next set of issues, and that's an issue update. We are going to talk a little bit about Senate races. Some things have been going on there. You may know that in November there's going to be 35 senators are going to be on their state's ballots, and 23 of those races are Republicans who are seated Republicans or those who are seated who have resigned, and the others are Democratic. And what this means is the Democratic side needs to gain 4 seats in order to take control of the Senate, and that's the number side of it. And there are 8 specific races that people are focusing on to watch, and that's what we're going to talk about. First, of course, is Maine, where Plattner and Collins, Susan Collins, of course, famous for her fence seating ability and always able to see how Trump and others just need more time, and she's going to talk to them or listen to them or give them some time to correct their own behaviors on their own time, which has worked beautifully. However, this Democratic candidate, Greg Plattner, was picked up by the progressives and was in a competitive primary against Janet Mills. Janet Mills, if you want to talk establishment, talk Janet Mills. She is the current governor of the state of Maine. So very high-ranking Democratic establishment member. And during the primary, she dropped out, leaving Plattner the only candidate. So he took that, and once he had about a 9% lead in the polls, then a lot of information came out about sexual problems or sexual issues related to him, and there are plenty, and some of them have very solid evidence. So now they're saying, the Democrats are saying, we are going to replace him. There's built into the system an allowance to replace a candidate by a specific date. If you do it before the election by a certain date, you can replace your candidate, even if they went through a primary. And so that's what looks like is going to happen if he will willingly resign as the nominee, which he can do and has until this coming Monday. Technically, he has till this Monday to do it. And if he does it before Monday, then the Democratic Party can replace him. If he does it after Monday, it will be too late. and the Democrats will not have a candidate for the November election against Susan Collins. It seems that two state officials have already shown interest in being the Democratic nominee, especially if they don't have to run a race to get there. And actually, one of the earliest supporters of Mr. Plattner was Bernie Sanders, who has stepped up and called for him to to cease his campaign. And Bernie's folks, or the group around Bernie, has already put forward another person by the name of Troy Jackson, who's a union guy and has served previously as the leader of the Maine State Senate. So he has what appears to be a more solid background, and we'll see what the Democratic Party of Maine does. That is one of the seats that the Democrats were really hoping to pick up, as that needing 4-seat gains would have been one. But now, with all these allegations and all this situation going on, Collins has started to take a more sizable lead and has a 2 or 3 percentage point lead now in a poll that was taken within the last day or two. North Carolina. Oh, well, I'll tell you what. I'll open the floor after each state, and then if there's any comments, please feel free to add them in, and then we'll move on.
I don't know if I have just Plattner. I feel like people have been very back and forth about him and whatever. So I don't know. It feels like there hasn't been. It feels like people were already kind of resigned to vote for him, not necessarily excited to vote for him. And so, yeah, I think like it's going to be all the harder to drum up momentum, but it would be great if somebody could win over Susan Collins.
We have dragged ourselves across broken glass, equivocating over Graham Plattner, and he's made it a very close call every time. At the primary, people waffled and wondered and grappled with the enigma that is Graham Plattner. You have on one side, he says all the right things. He talks a bunch of shit about keeping billionaires in line and taking it all back from the fat cats and making it all about the people again. And it's such a breath of fresh air, especially when we're just swimming in the sewage of Trump's federal corruption, just washing over us. So yeah, you have this powerful attractant, this thing we need, we want. Oh my God, Bernie endorsed him, yay! And then and then and and it's like it's just raining bird shit with this guy, and you can't dance between the globs. I wish he would inspire copycats. I wish instead of turning to the next three establishment Democrats, cardboard cutout, number 2, 3, and 5 coming at you. Why doesn't he inspire somebody else to get up and say that billionaires need to cut the crap and we need to tax them more and people need health care and clean water? Yeah, I mean, it sucks. I don't shed any tears for Graham Plattner. He sounds like a terrible, terrible person, or at least someone who's done terrible, done some bad things, or at least may have. We don't know, allegedly. But he doesn't make it easy to choose him. On the other hand, we know exactly what we're getting with Susan Collins. We know exactly what we're getting with the Republicans writ large. They're all corrupt. They all go along to get along. They will all shove you into a wood chipper before they'll stick up for the Constitution or equal rights or anything. And so politics has always been about balancing two evils, and it's not looking like it's going to stop now.
Agreed. And people who are on the moral side of this issue, who are saying and pointing out quite validly, these things are not acceptable, that the things he's accused of, and I think there is some evidence backing it. So if that is the case, then he does have to go, and there is a moral issue. And I just wish that if that moral issue is going to be applied to this one candidate, that maybe it should be applied to other candidates and other
Wouldn't that be
elected
great?
officials too. Yeah, and not just this particular guy. But we'll see what comes up in the not only in the real world, but we'll see what else comes up in this list
Not
in the next
not that you have
couple of
anybody in mind specifically.
just on chance that there might
In
be
general,
some sort of thing
thinking out loud.
coming up. But first, we'll go to North Carolina, which is one of those. This is one of those pickup opportunities for the Democratic Party. The current Senator Tom Tillis is resigning so that he can run for the governor position in North Carolina. So that's pretty likely, or at least he is probably the best candidate that the Republicans have, and he's Tom Tillis. Look it up. But the previous governor of North Carolina is a very popular Democratic guy by the name of Roy Cooper. And Roy Cooper is the one who's running for the Senate seat on the Democratic side now. So he's popular. He has support throughout the state. And it seems like this is one of those that will flip the way that we would very much like to see on the Democratic side. This would be a pickup, just like Maine would have been, of the four that we need to see. So keep an eye on Roy Cooper. He's been in the lead in the polls, and he is, and I mean, a nice size. He's got like a 10-point lead in his polls. Anything on North Carolina before we move on to Ohio?
I don't know much about Cooper. Doing a quick lookup, it looks like he's like, this seems weird to say, but he's like done things, which I feel is one of the big criticisms being leveled against the Democrats. It seems like he did, hurricane responses, teacher pay, Medicaid expansion, the kinds of things that are like, yes, sort of maybe like left of center, but are also just like very popular with constituents.
Doing the right thing, right? That things that actually help people, and certainly the sort of things a governor can do. Yeah. All right, we'll move on to Ohio, which is another one which is a potential pickup. It's another, I guess I'm saying this for everyone right now, but it's another one of those that has a weird little twist or two in it. This is one of the Senate seats in Ohio. Now, the Democrats have gotten a candidate, very solid, serious candidate by the name of Sherrod Brown. The reason he's a solid and serious candidate is he was Ohio's Democratic senator. There had been a period where Ohio would take one Democrat and one Republican, or the results were that there were one Republican and one Democrat senator in the state for a long time. Now, last cycle, Sherrod Brown lost his seat to one of these alt-right, Trump guys, and so he lost his seat, the one he had, and this cycle he's running again for the other seat. So it could be that the Ohio voters will do what they've done in the past, and they have a Republican, and now there's an opportunity for them to vote for not only a Democrat, but one they know and one they've seen in office and can judge based on his record. And the Republican that he's running against is a guy named John Husted. Now, John Husted is a Republican longstanding elected official. He's done not as he hasn't been a senator before, but he was the Secretary of State for a while. He was lieutenant governor, some of those more, I guess you'd say, sort of secondary type positions. And he's been around for a time. So it's possible that familiarity is part of what will help in this election, and we'll have to see how it plays out. The polls have been very close, and so some of the polls show Brown with up to 3% lead at a time, and then others show Houston with up to a 3% lead at a time. So at the very least you can say it's a close one, and we'll have to watch and see what happens as to what happens on election day itself. Up in Alaska, there's one that we've mentioned before. If you've seen our show on a previous occasion or two, you may recall that we talked about how the Republicans have a candidate, an incumbent by the name of Dan Sullivan, and there's a second person on the ballot of a number of different candidates. But there is a second person named Daniel Sullivan who is also a Republican. And the elections division folks said, we're not going to allow that. That's not okay. But the rules in the Constitution are if your age is an issue, whether you're a citizen is an issue. What is not an issue is if your name is similar to somebody else who's on the ballot. So they overstepped their boundary. They were supported by the Republicans, who have some power in the state and have for a long time. So they were going to get away with it, but the candidate himself objected to being removed on no grounds whatsoever, and he was able to appeal the decision. He will be on the ballot. Of course, there's a difference, and first of all, their middle names are different, so the middle name or the middle initial will be there. But also, the incumbent Dan Sullivan is noted as the incumbent, so people who want to vote for him only need to know that that's the case. The Democrat in the race is Mary Petola, who is very interesting because she won a statewide, as a Democratic candidate, won a statewide election in Alaska. She was the House member. Now, in some states, there's every state has 2 senators, and the House is based on population. Because of the population of Alaska, there's only 1 House seat. So she had to run statewide, just like the senators did. And as a Democratic candidate, she won. And then the next election, she lost. And now she's running for this Senate position. Once again, this is one of those where it's all of the polls are within 2% for the top 2 candidates, being Dan Sullivan, the incumbent, and Mary Petola, the Democratic candidate. Anything about Alaska before we go? Any mushers or no dog sled talk. Okay, that brings us to Iowa. There was a Republican senator in Iowa, pretty much par for the course, and she decided to resign. She's moving on to another position, and it looks like the Republicans perform pretty strong in Iowa, and have for a while. Not only Republicans, but they tend to do pretty well. This race, it looks like both the Republican and the Democrat are running at about 46% each. So it's a statistical tie. And actually, in the last poll that Fox gave, they had the Democratic candidate with a 4% lead. So I don't know where that's from or what that's about, but it looks like Turek, Mr. Turek, may have something going on. The Democratic candidate, we'll have to see on election day. Anything about Iowa or corn or no?
I mean,
Okay.
that would be. I won't hold my breath for it to go blue, but that would be amazing.
Yeah, exactly. It would be amazing, and it would be one of those actual turning over of flipping a seat that the Democrats need towards the 4 that they have to find somewhere. So, those all of the ones that I've mentioned so far would be a pickup if the Democrat actually wins. So, yeah, fair point. Now there's Texas. Okay, so here you go. Here's the story. For 30 years, only Republicans have served in statewide election positions. So they've had a lock on all of the anything that you have to run statewide for, they've won for 30 years. So it doesn't look like this will flip. And yet, if you think Maine had issues with a candidate who's running for Senate, well, then hold on for a Texas sized kick in the head from Republican Ken Paxton. He's so corrupt, even the Republican held Texas House impeached him several years ago when he was the state attorney general. They impeached him in May of 2023 by a vote of 121 to 23. Now, this is a Republican stronghold state assembly that voted overwhelmingly to impeach this guy. They had 20 articles of impeachment: bribery, abuse of public trust, obstruction of justice. And they're Republicans, so 6 months later they acquitted him. But they did actually impeach him at the time. And his wife divorced him. You may have seen some mention of this in the press. She divorced him based on, quote, biblical grounds, unquote, because she suspected him or had information. She had credible evidence that he had been committing adultery. So, adultery, bribery, abuse of public trust, obstruction of justice. I wonder where all those people who are concerned about the Maine race are when it comes to Paxton and the Texas race. It was so bad, Trump endorsed him. Anyway, the Democratic candidate is a former state official and running on you mentioned earlier, Tom, the idea of breaking the billionaires' hold and what they can do to allow the people to get back into having some control on what happens in government. And we'll see which thing Texans pick on election day. Do they go for that sort of standing up to billionaires and trying to make things better? Or do they support the adulterer who has been impeached over bribery and abuse of public trust and obstruction of justice? We'll see. Anything about Texas before we move on to Michigan?
Texas I'm not from there, but I get the impression that there's a little bit of a threat of it going a little bit more purple all the time. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. Obviously you have a quite strong incumbent, but we'll see. I feel like there's some building frustration there.
Well, right, and technically the incumbent was the one that Paxton beat in the primary. He beat Cronin, and that's also adding into the race because Cronin is outraged, first of all, that Trump endorsed the guy who was challenging him because he thought he had the power of the incumbency, and he hates Paxton, so he literally has a personal stake in Paxton losing, and has said that he's not going to give his campaign money to the Paxton candidacy. And in fact, he's going to find a way to give money to Republicans in other states rather than give it to Texas Republicans in that race. So we'll see. That it's just another layer of the soap opera that is this Senate race. On to Michigan. And Republicans already have their candidate. And the Democratic primary is August 4th. So up to now, it's been the establishment versus progressive, with a twist that there was a third candidate who was also running on the Democratic side. The progressive has had an edge during these past couple of weeks, and that's been showing in the polling that progressives consistently had a higher 4 to 6 point lead over the establishment candidate, with the third party person with a low amount of the poll as well, but more than the difference between the two candidates. Now, the third party candidate, or not third party, but the third candidate in the Democratic primary, has just withdrawn from the race these past couple of days. So now it's going to be straight up the progressive Abdul El Sayed. Dr. El Sayed is interested in seeing if he can pick up the voters who were behind the third candidate. And the establishment candidate, Haley Stevens, she is an elected official who feels that voters who are backing another woman will want to turn to her because she's the other woman candidate in the race. And we'll see how it plays out all on August 4th. So grab some popcorn, get to a TV or the internet, and watch what happens in Michigan. That moves us on to Georgia. And this one is interesting because it's an incumbent Democrat. This is Democratic Senator John Ossoff, and he'll be facing Republican Mike Collins. Surely we need 2 Collins in the Senate. And up to now, Ossoff has held a substantial lead in the polls. And we'll see. Of course, the Republicans would like to knock him off, and that would make it one more seat lost that would have to be gained somewhere else. But right now, at least, it looks like Ossoff is doing quite well. Georgia, anyone? Gotcha. No midnight train. Gotcha.
Not on
We
my
move
mind.
We will move on to Kentucky, which is one more of those sort of. This is not on people's radar so much as it's a developing story now. The senator is Mitch McConnell, and we're not certain if he's going to start showing up on milk cartons or not, pretending not to have died. But there's some thought that perhaps he's just been raptured. He's just disappeared. No one knows. At least no one's saying it. And actually, what's happened within the past day, within the past 12 to 24 hours, is Tom reminded me that the governor of Kentucky is a Democratic elected official, Andy Beshear. And if the seat opens prior to the full election cycle in November, then the governor gets to set up a special election. Other than that, if that does not happen, then it's just part of the same November cycle that everyone knows of, and that Kentuckians tend to go with Republican candidates in general. The governor's situation was different, but then again, so was the House seat for Thomas Massie, who is a Republican but a strong libertarian, and the establishment Republicans defeated him in the last election. So it's topsy-turvy there. We don't know what will happen. The point being that Governor Beshear did call on Mitch McConnell to, since he's disappeared for the past 3 weeks, he's called on today Mitch McConnell to simply make a statement. Say something. Come in front of the cameras. Say anything, just to show that you are alive. And of course, the Republican leadership in the Senate all say, "Well, we talk to him all the time. There's no problem there. He's fine. He's talking to us
at length about issues."
Exactly. Probably on Skype. I'm sure.
Did somebody lay their phone next to his head and they spoke to the limp body of McConnell? I mean, how thick is the spin on how thin is the truth? I don't know how they think they're going to cover this up. Maybe they don't think they have to worry about it. I don't know. It makes no sense.
Well, we'll see how they actually react. Now, when the governor who makes that decision says, "Hey, can you at least show your face?" Then there's, that's a pressure. But of course, the Republicans are closing rank and saying, "No, he's fine. He's just not going to actually say anything or show himself."
Believe me.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the Iranians, right? The Iranians with
two words never carried so much weight. Believe me.
Exactly. Well, just like the Iranians were saying, sure, our leader is fine. No, there was no, yeah, he wasn't killed or anything. He's fine. He's alive. He's going to make a speech. So, what's going on with Mitch McConnell? Alive, dead, um, simply battling health issues. It's just not clear, and for some reason, they're not making it clear. But they have until August 3rd. If it can be proven that the worst has happened before August 3rd, then a special election can be called by the governor. After that, then it will the people of Kentucky will continue to not have a senator until November. So, and the point I wanted to reiterate before moving on is that the turnover that we're talking about of there's 35 seats, 23 are Republican seats, and the Democrats need to pick up from those 23 4 seats in total in order to flip the Senate and make it Democratic. So that's the goal. Stay tuned, and we'll see how it plays out. Let's jump forward a little bit to our next issue, which is Fascism Creeps. First off is the man who's been suing, or who is suing, the Department of Homeland Security after they show up in person. There's an issue with a scathing email involved. Who can tell us more?
Yeah, so apparently this guy in Rochester wrote an email to ICE saying that he didn't like what they're doing. He compared this ICE person to a Nazi and predicted that he would be tormented by his own conscience. Sorry. And it had the subject line, "What's next?" And ICE agents showed up to his house. They showed up 5 months later. He wasn't at home. He and his daughter were on vacation, but his wife was home. And they brought her this paper being like, hey, you got to sign this because you are threatening law enforcement, which is a crime. And basically, he's coming back and saying, first of all, I didn't threaten anybody. And also, if you feel super threatened, why did it take you 5 months to come and send this to me? Usually, if it was a threat, you would, try and approach it as soon as possible. And then it also seems like they, I don't know if it was ICE agents or other federal agents, also talked to somebody, I believe, in upstate New York, saying that she had a poll worker saying that she had doxed some government officials, and they had screenshots, but the screenshots don't appear anywhere online. She denied that she ever posted them. There's no evidence except for this thing that they have, but basically it's definitely shady to just show up to people's houses and because they are upset with the way that you're doing government. It's definitely a violation of people's free speech.
Yeah, and what was it that it actually said?
They don't have the exact text, but it says that it referred to compared this guy Lyons to a Nazi and said that he would be tormented by his own conscience. And the subject line was, "What's next?" After some federal immigration officers in Minneapolis shot the two citizens that we talked about, Alex Preddy and cannot remember her name.
Good.
Renee Good. Yes, Renee Good. And then I don't know if they have the and then the other lady that they said doxed, apparently the post had a picture of somebody or whatever, and it said, he can be found at this location. But she's like, I didn't post that, and apparently it's not on her socials, and there's no evidence except for the thing they had.
Yeah, so basically saying that they have a conscience is an attack on them. I mean, that's one way to interpret what's happening.
And I mean, like, I feel like it's one thing. It's it's more than fair free speech to be like, hey, you should be ashamed of your behavior.
Gotcha. Another item for fascism creep. Tom, anything on that before we?
Nothing additional.
Fair enough. The other thing to mention in fascism creeps is the far right political party in Germany that has what is widely considered to be fascist positions. And Elon Musk has apparently come out in support of. And they have just recently said that they're ready to run the country. So they're going to be actively participating in the political system as they have been, and but their goal will be to take over the government. And some people are saying that's an awfully reminiscent. That is awfully reminiscent of some other activities in the past which have been a concern. So perhaps we should take it more seriously this time, and we'll have to see how it plays out. Speaking of Germany and the international world, we'll move on to international news. The North America Treaty Organization, or NATO, is meeting on July 7th and 8th. And so they did meet. And there's been a lot going on. There's a need for, the organizers have pointed out that there's a need for maintenance of Trump when he's in an event. He insults allies. He works to create discord. And when there are various meetings, this is the things that he likes to do. So instead of a 2-day summit, which is the standard, what they wanted to do actually was make it as little as possible, as few things as possible. They wanted to boil it down to having a dinner and then having one joint meeting instead of a set of panels usually. And the thing that I noticed was that they were talking about Trump talking to Turkey and talking to, some of the things that are going on in the Middle East. And Mark Carney, the coverage up in Canada, was how Mark Carney was going to be in Turkey to discuss things with Turkey as far as alliances and what can be done to broaden Canada's trade. And it seems to be a different approach than what we're seeing from Trump, and how what ways can they rebuild any relationships that they have had damaged with Turkey. There's some concerns over the genocide from last century against the Armenians. There's a large Armenian population in Canada. So when the government starts talking about Turkey and wanting to have trade with them or having agreements, this causes a reaction. So part of what Carney is doing is going there to discuss what can be done and what is okay and what's not. And so we'll be able to see a different style of leadership, and we can compare and contrast the two. We already talked about the Iranian funeral, and in other international news, Cuba has had a nationwide blackout. Is there anything about the blackout?
They've just
Or-
been, I mean, they've been having issues getting oil due to American blockades and other things. And so they just, they're running out of power generation abilities. And so it's causing these like massive blackouts.
I believe Mexico has also been very, very prepared to address humanitarian issues and to support Cuba with aid, which is something that you would expect from a world leader, something you would expect from a nation that's a leading nation. And speaking of nations and leaders in the world, Ukraine has been having some interesting times, not only with the war, but with what happens next. Zelensky has been demanding that the West support Ukraine because Russia has increased its attacks on Kyiv. And I believe it was something like in a 24-hour period, there were 48 bombs and something like 350 drone attacks. So things are focusing back on the capital. Meanwhile, Ukraine does have drones that have been hitting Moscow somewhat regularly. So they are responding in kind. But of course, Putin takes that and says, oh, look, they did this horrible thing to Moscow. So that's in the mix and with the alleged peace talks that are continuing. Now, the military officers. Tom, can you tell us some of the things that the Russian military officers are doing that may be adding to the chaos?
Well, it's reputed that they are rife with corruption, and they are doing things like holding on to uh, dead military members' pay as if they're still alive, not reporting they're dead so that the checks keep coming, and saving that. Uh, that's just one of the things one of the types of skullduggery they're accused of doing. And they're afraid of the war's end because they'll have to account for all of these things.
Yeah, yeah, I could see where that would be. Somebody's going to look at that kind of stuff, try to figure out where the pay was going and where the troops are going. What I had heard was that new recruits were brought into the Russian army, and they are reaching out to Korea, North Korea, and they're reaching out to Africa. And in fact, they're not being, surprise, surprise, they're not being honest about things. They're just saying to people they're recruiting, oh, we have jobs. And if you're looking for a job, we've got one. Come work for us. And then the recruits who may not realize what's going on are taken, and when they get there, they're thrown into military service and given barely training with what to do with the weapon. Maybe they're given clothes, and then thrown out so quickly onto the field that the average life of the new recruit for the Russian army is currently 12 days. So this image that Putin keeps putting out about this grand march that they're on and that they are taking swaths of land every day and they're continuing to move forward. Well, perhaps they're moving forward, but they're not doing swaths of land to anything. They're taking very little. They're doing it incrementally. And it's costing because the Ukrainians are saying, we are not going to be able to hold you off of the land, but we can make you pay. And that will be in the lives of your soldiers. You can move forward, but you're going to have casualties. You're going to have mounting casualties.
It's my understanding, anecdotally, that the nobody's really gaining or losing ground. The borders, the skirmish lines they have are fairly set, and if they do take ground, it often becomes recaptured within a short period of time, ending in a net no gain, no loss. But it is grinding both sides. The difference to me is that apparently Ukraine has figured out how to destroy and surpass their air defenses, and they're starting to they just got done bombing in Siberia, bombed the last big refinery, I think, in Russia that hasn't been hit. They finally hit it, and they attacked. I think it was 12 Shadow Fleet tankers in the middle of the night, blew them to hell. So, I mean, if you're rooting for Ukraine, it's looking pretty hopeful. To me, that's what I see. Who knows what propaganda? Every country, every group, every different country probably gets different news and different propaganda and different truth scuttled in however it may. Who knows?
Well, part of it is a propaganda war as well, and we won't know until we find out after the fact. It's not going to be something that can be easily verified at the time because it's a war. And that means there's a lot of chaos, and that means that part of it is what you say and how people respond to that. So we'll see if the Western countries, even Trump apparently, is starting to tell Ukraine that he's going to do things for them. He's saying that there's a weapon system coming their way that he had not, earlier he had not been so favorable of passing on to them, but something's going on because or whoever it is who last talked to him got him to understand that things are going better for Ukraine because he's all of a sudden helping them. It appears currently, allegedly.
Allegedly.
So we'll see what happens, and of course we do want to mention. Hannah, anything on Ukraine before we move on to Iran? Okay, and Iran, we mentioned before. I just wanted to reiterate that the whole thing of how Trump has ended that war 38 times so far, and it looks like another couple of times because here we go again. It's war, and um, bombings have started on both sides again. So part of what had happened was a ship owned by the United Kingdom apparently had gone through the Straits of Hormuz, but did not comply with the instructions that the Iranians had given him. So they were fired on, and the U.S. used that as a reason to retaliate and has been bombing for 2 days. And so a classic Trump ceasefire. Speaking of Trump, we'll move on to the last of the issues for tonight, and that is your Trump dump. I did want to read a brief piece here that The Atlantic has published. About 10 years ago, The Atlantic published this piece, and I'm not going to read it in full, but a couple of lines from it. And it was called Opiate of the Masses about Donald Trump. And it says, in part, during this election season, it appears many Americans have reached for a new pain reliever. It, too, promises a quick escape from life's cares, an easy solution in the mounting social problems of U.S. communities and culture. Demands nothing and requires little more than a modest presence and maybe a few enablers. It enters minds not through lungs or veins, but through eyes and ears, and its name is Donald Trump. What Trump offers is an easy escape from the pain. To every complex promise, he promises a simple solution. He can bring jobs back simply by punishing offshore companies into submission. As he told a New Hampshire crowd, folks all too familiar with the opioid scourge, he can cure the addiction epidemic by building a Mexican wall and keeping the cartels out. He'll spare the United States from humiliation and military defeat with indiscriminate bombing. It doesn't matter that no credible military leader endorses his plans. He never offers details for how the plans will work because he can't. Trump's promises are the needle in America's collective vein. Trump is cultural heroin. He makes some feel better for a bit, but he cannot fix what ails them, and one day they'll realize the person who wrote that article in 2016, J.D. Vance.
Never met a principal he wouldn't leave aside like a baby in a blizzard.
Where is he now? Yeah, so pretty scathing and frankly on point, and yet you see how the Republican Party works its way out. There's also Trump apparently during the NATO meeting we mentioned earlier. He became very disturbed because they were working from tablets, and he couldn't get it to unmute. So he became very frustrated and threw the tablet across the room, and they had to help him with that. That's just another sort of not in tune with your average American sort of thing. And of course, there's the reflecting pool and the company that they did not put through any sort of a process to select. He selected a neighbor from Mar-a-Lago, and though the guy does have a pool company, apparently it was not up to speed on how to handle something like a reflecting pool. Although Trump has blamed it on a mystery terrorist who cut down the middle with a knife. Although that's where the drainage system is. It's a small crease that goes through the center of the reflecting pool, but maybe it was just a very exacting type of process. Crypto. You may well know Trump has a crypto company or a crypto coin. Investors so far have lost $3.8 million, according to a recent look at things. And so the crypto coin that Trump has put out is your average Trump product. And what else? He's installing there's a helipad. It's at the White House. And he has now, his latest thing is not a ballroom, not reflecting pool, but the new thing is that he's going to install granite for the helipad, so more and powerful helicopters can land at the White House. So there's the sort of thing that you need to know when you go to try to buy milk. And
That can only portend good things, right?
right. The building will have to be demolished so that they can put it together and have the helipad on top of it. There's still the West Wing still exists. So
It's true.
we talked about his latest claim of stopping 100 wars, and that being as true as anything else he says. Also, anybody have any word on Bruce Springsteen?
Apparently, I think it was an interview, he just said that Trump is a coward, which has frustrated Trump, obviously, because he's Bruce Springsteen. I guess he'd probably be frustrated no matter who it was, but I thought it was nice to end with that thought.
Yeah, there's a little something to keep things going, that people are willing to speak truth to power. They're able to speak up about things. And as long as we can start getting people to pick up on the idea of showing up for elections, maybe we can get some of these guys out. I'm reminded of the guy over in Hungary who had been dictator for a dozen years and seemed intractable. And what really got him out was the people got together and said, we got to do the right thing. We got to go to the polls. We got to get him out. And it worked. That brings us to, speaking of getting people out of office, hey, how about that Epstein countdown? The number of days since the unredacted Epstein list has not been released. We're currently at day 4,040. Something to tell your friends about. Thanks for joining us for PolitiPod Live for Political Talk. You're welcome to join us every Wednesday from 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here for PolitiPod Live. If you want political laughs, join us and a half dozen of our friends for our monthly political comedy podcast, PolitiPod. You'll find that at soundcloud.com/PolitiPod.
I'm Tom Bickle.
I'm Hannah Soldner.
And I'm Matt Nisanoff saying goodbye.